A town in Texas has been calling itself the most haunted place in the state for 100 years. Not as a joke, not as a tourism gimmick that came and went, as a sustained, serious, commercial claim, backed by steamboat-era hotels, a genuine 1877 murder trial, and a bayou that steams at night like it knows what it's doing. Most places get called haunted by accident. This one built its whole economy around the label, refined it block by block, and never blinked. And here's the part that catches most people. The scariest entries on this list are not the ones with ghost stories. They are the ones where the ghost story is the least interesting thing happening. Texas Exposed covers the state the way it actually sits, not the way a visitor center poster wants you to see it. 12 towns today. If that sounds like your kind of hour, subscribe now. We are not going anywhere, and neither are these places. Number 12, The Grove. There is a cluster of storefronts in Coryell County, southwest of Gatesville and the rolling farmland west of Waco, that has been standing in deliberate stillness since 1972. Not ruins, preserved. A general store, a saloon, a doctor's office. Every surface maintained, every window intact, and no sound coming from any of it. The Grove was a prosperous German immigrant farming community of roughly 400 people by 1900. German settlers raised the St. Paul Lutheran Church in the 1870s, and it still stands. What ended the town was not disaster or drought, but geography made inconvenient. The creation of Fort Hood and Lake Belton in the 1940s swallowed the surrounding farmland and drained the town of its purpose. Collector Moody Anderson bought the remaining commercial buildings in 1972 and froze them in place. The best-known name attached to this place is Miss Louise Young, who lived here into the 1980s and told friends matter-of-factly about the Haints sharing her house. That detail has traveled. The cemetery on the edge of the town site has been whispered about for over a century. Stand on one of those empty porches on a gray afternoon, between the shuttered saloon and the shuttered doctor's office, and the feeling you get is not quite unease. It is more like arriving somewhere between words, after someone stopped mid-sentence and stepped away. Here is what the listing never says. The Grove is a curated living history photo stop. The eeriness is manufactured stillness. The buildings are staged. The cemetery whispers are folklore, not documented anything. Nothing here has been formally investigated, recorded, or confirmed. What you are feeling is silence that was carefully purchased and maintained by a private collector. That is its own kind of strange, honestly. Stranger, maybe, than a ghost. The scariest thing here is how well someone preserved the quiet. Number 11, Glenrio. On the far western edge of the Panhandle, where Texas runs into New Mexico along what used to be Route 66, there is a main street that time did not exactly abandon. It just stopped delivering mail. Glenrio began in 1903 as a railroad, siding where trains took on water, crossing the high plains. By the 1920s, it had grown into a functional stop. Hotel, cafes, service stations, a land office. Then Interstate 40 came through in the mid-1970s, bypassed the old road entirely, and the traffic that had kept Glenrio breathing simply redirected. The town did not fight it. It just stopped. What stands now is a National Register historic district of sun-bleached shells, the State Line Motel and Cafe, a collapsing gas station, a post office that sat on the New Mexico side of the line while its mail arrived addressed to Texas. The dry climate has done something unusual to these buildings. Instead of rotting them, it has mummified them. They stand in place, bleaching. Doors hang open to nothing. The interiors are readable. You can see where the counter was, where the chairs were, where people used to stand. But there is no one and no story attached to the vacancy. That is the thing about Glenrio. There is no ghost here, no named tragedy, no legend, no brakeman, no woman in white, no letter that was never delivered. The town ran out of traffic and stopped, and the dry air preserved the evidence with a precision that feels almost deliberate. Picture this. You walk the main street past doors standing open to flat, windy nothing, and the only narrative is arithmetic. Cars went this way. Then they went that way instead, and here is what a town looks like when the math changes. Glenrio is fully accessible, fully legal, beloved by Route 66 photographers, and completely unexplained by any story anyone has thought to tell. The most unsettling ghost town in Texas has no ghost. Number 10, Fort Phantom Hill. 11 to 14 miles north of Abilene on FM 600, in Jones County, a row of upright stone chimneys stands against an open sky. They are blackened. They are roofless. They have been standing like that for over 150 years, and they look like they were always meant to. The fort was established in November 1851 to guard westbound migrants, abandoned by the Army just 3 years later in 1854, and then mostly burned. Nobody has ever settled definitively on how, leaving the stone structures that fire could not touch. A town grew around the ruins in the 1870s, thrived briefly in 1876 and 1877 as a buffalo hide shipping point during the slaughter of the southern herds, and even held the county seat for 6 months in 1881. Then the railroad chose Abilene, and that was the end of any future Fort Phantom Hill might have had. The name is older than any ghost story attached to the place, and here is where it gets genuinely strange. Nobody knows where it came from. The origin is disputed. Multiple theories, no consensus, no document that settles it. That uncertainty matters because the legends that followed, soldier apparitions, a lady in the lake, said to drift near the water at night, grew to explain a name that was already strange before anyone needed a reason. The powder magazine is still intact. The chimneys still stand. On a clear afternoon, the skyline does the haunting before a single legend is mentioned. The catch worth stating plainly, the site is a free, well-kept daytime historic ruin maintained by a preservation foundation. The hauntings are frontier storytelling. The phantom in the name predates all of it, and its true origin remains genuinely unknown. That unresolved strangeness at the center of a well-documented, well-maintained, completely accessible historic site is what tips this entry into the list. The name was already strange before anyone needed a reason. Number 9, Medicine Mound. On a lonely road southwest of Chillicothe in southeastern Hardeman County, 4 cone-shaped dolomite hills rise about 350 feet above the flat prairie. They are visible for miles in every direction on a flat landscape that offers almost nothing else to look at. The Comanche held them sacred for generations. The flat tops were believed to be home to powerful spirits, and people gathered there for ceremonies and to collect medicinal herbs. That practice did not end. Native people still returned to these hills for spiritual guidance. A town grew nearby around 1908 to meet the Kansas City, Mexico, and Orient Railway. At its height, Medicine Mound had roughly 500 residents, 22 businesses, and its own newspaper. A devastating downtown fire in 1932, combined with the slow exodus already underway, gutted what remained. The town is now nearly gone. What remains is the landscape itself. The mounds looming over the emptied town site, the same hills that were sacred long before the town existed and remain so now that the town is largely gone. There is no ghost legend here, and that is worth saying directly. This is not a haunted attraction. The mounds sit on private ranch land and are sacred ground, not a ruin to walk through or a stop to plan around. The unsettling quality is not a story anyone told. It is the weight of a landscape that watches, and the fact that the watching has been going on far longer than the town that rose and fell beneath it. Some places aren't haunted. They're holy. That's harder to shake. Number 8, Thurber. About 75 miles west of Fort Worth, just off Interstate 20 in Erath County, a single brick smokestack stands over empty hills. It is sited at around 128 feet. There is nothing else of scale near it. That chimney is what remains of Thurber, once the great bituminous coal camp of Texas, a company town that at its height held perhaps 8,000 to 10,000 people. Immigrants from Italy, Poland, Ireland, and a dozen other countries drawn to work the seams. From 1886 forward, it functioned as a self-contained world. It was one of the first towns in Texas to have full electric service in 1895. It had its own water system, its own brick plant, its own schools. It was, by the standards of its era, a going concern. Then the railroad switched from coal to oil. In 1933, the company announced the town was closing. Not winding down. Closing. By 1938, it was a ghost. The workers and their families dispersed. The structures came down or were removed. The hills went quiet. On a rise nearby, the cemetery where the immigrant miners were buried still holds them. Far from the countries they came from, under Texas grass, beside a town that no longer exists to remember them. A restaurant and the WK Gordon Center Museum keep a thread of activity at the highway exit today. A handful of residents. The smokestack and the hillside cemetery supply what atmosphere there is. There is no formal ghost claim attached to Thurber, no legend of particular weight. What it carries instead is the plain arithmetic of scale. 8 to 10,000 people, gone in 5 years, one chimney left to mark the math. That is the kind of thing that settles differently than a ghost story. It sits longer. Number 7, Sour Lake. The oldest town in Hardeman County sits about 20 miles west of Beaumont in southeast Texas, and it announces itself in the name before you arrive, Sour Lake. Settled around 1835 around sulfurous mineral springs, the place became a health resort by 1850. An ailing Sam Houston came here seeking relief from his war wounds. The springs gave the town its identity, a destination for the unwell, built on water that smelled wrong and was supposed to help anyway. Then oil was struck in July 1902. What followed was not a boom so much as an explosion. Up to 10,000 people, 52 saloons, 50,000 barrels a day. The company that came out of those fields eventually became Texaco. The sulfurous spa town and the oil boom town occupied the same coordinates, and almost nothing of the resort survived the transition. And then the oil field's own success turned against the ground it sat on. Draining a reservoir on top of a salt dome has a slow consequence. The land sinks. The old resort lakeshore subsided. One of the largest sinkholes in Texas now sits fenced off where a spa once stood, the earth quietly swallowing itself in a town that still has roughly 1,773 people living in it. The sinkhole is documented ground subsidence over a depleted oil field. Nothing supernatural, nothing contested. But stand at the fence line and look at what the ground is doing. In a place where the springs once drew the sick and the oil once drew the reckless, and the name Sour Lake starts to feel less like a historical accident and more like a diagnosis. The town is named Sour Lake, and the ground beneath it is eating itself. Some places write their own warnings. 7 towns in, and we haven't reached the road where a pumpkin-sized orb of light drifts through a tunnel of absolute dark, and no one has fully explained it yet. Number 6, Indianola. On Matagorda Bay in Calhoun County, southeast of Victoria near present-day Port Lavaca, there is almost nothing above the waterline. A granite marker where a courthouse once stood. A weathered statue of LaSalle facing the Gulf. Below the surface of the shallow bay, the foundations of a city. Indianola was once Texas' second busiest seaport and the seat of Calhoun County, a working city of about 5,000 people in 1875. Goods and immigrants moved through it. It was a functioning port in a state that needed ports. On September 15th, 1875, a hurricane killed somewhere between 150 and 300 residents and nearly erased the town. The people who survived rebuilt. You have to hold that for a moment. They came back, repaired, and continued. Then on August 19th, 1886, a second great hurricane hit, and fire followed the storm. This time the calculation changed. The post office closed for good in 1887. The county seat moved inland. The rebuilding did not happen. What the storms left behind is not a ruin you can walk through. The buildings are gone, the streets are gone, the whole urban fabric of a mid-19th century port city is underwater. The granite marker and the statue are what the historical record managed to leave above the surface. Picture this. You stand at the waterline where a courthouse used to be, and the water is flat and shallow and utterly ordinary, and somewhere below your sightline is the evidence that an entire city existed here, and then the weather decided otherwise, twice. The haunting quality of Indianola is not legend. It is the sober weight of documented erasure, handled as history. 2 hurricanes and a fire. The second time, nobody came back. Number 5, Bailey's Prairie. Along Highway 30 in Brazoria County, between West Columbia and Angleton in southeast Texas, there is a quiet residential village of about 775 people. Bailey's Prairie does not look like much from the road. What it holds is one of the oldest ghost legends in the state, attached to a real man with a real grave. James Britton Britt Bailey was a hard-drinking, contrary pioneer, one of Stephen F. Austin's old 300 colonists, who died in 1832 and left specific instructions for his burial. Standing up, facing west. Folklore later added a rifle at his side and a jug of whiskey at his feet, because of course it did. Ever since, travelers on the dark stretches near Highway 30 have reported a bouncing ball of white light moving along the roadside. Sometimes it appears as the shape of a man with a lantern. The legend holds that old Britt is still out there, prowling his prairie, still looking for a drink he has not found in nearly 200 years. The Texas Historical Commission planted a marker here in 1970, which is the state's way of acknowledging that something worth noting happened at this spot, even if that something is primarily a story. Driving that dark stretch at night, the light bobs ahead in the distance. No road to account for it, no obvious source. Skeptics have offered swamp gas. Distant headlights from another road entirely, bending in the humidity. Both explanations are reasonable, and neither one has fully closed the question. Britt Bailey and his upright grave are documented. The spirit is legend. The setting is a residential village and not a destination stop, which is part of what makes it feel more genuine than a ticketed experience. He told them how to bury him. He didn't tell them he was finished. Number 4, Saratoga. East of the small, big thicket community of Saratoga in Hardeman County, a road runs 8 miles through dense forest, dead straight, unpaved, dark. It follows the bed of a Santa Fe rail line built in 1901 and pulled up in 1934. The county now calls it Ghost Road Scenic Drive, which is either truth in advertising or the understatement of the year. After dark, drivers on this road report the Saratoga Light, also called the Bragg Road Ghost Light, a pumpkin-sized orb, usually white, sometimes with a bluish cast, that appears far down the corridor of trees, drifts, brightens, and then blinks out. The legend gives it an origin story. A railroad brakeman who was decapitated in a wreck, his lantern still swinging as he walks the old lines searching for his head. This is the kind of legend that fits the place too well to be entirely comfortable. The road is public and drivable, which means people test it regularly. The sighting is inconsistent. The orb does not perform on a schedule. Some nights, nothing. Other nights, there it is, drifting between the walls of thicket on either side of a road that has no shoulder, no turnout, and nowhere to step if you wanted to get out and investigate. The skeptic's explanation is persistent. Distant headlights on a highway beyond the tree line, refracting through the humidity and the canopy at a shifting angle, traveling down the straight corridor in a way that mimics movement. It is a plausible theory. It has not convinced everyone who has driven the road after dark. The dead straight 8-mile lane, the absolute dark, the dense thicket closing in on both sides. These do most of the unsettling before the light appears. Whatever the light is, the road itself is doing real work. The road is 8 miles long and dead straight. If the light is just headlights, why does it drift? 4 towns left. And one of them is a 14-story building that stood rotting in the center of a living city for decades, and the town just kept living around it. Number 3, Yorktown. In DeWitt County, southeast of San Antonio between Cuero and Nixon, a town of about 1,810 people has carried the weight of one particular building longer than it probably wanted to. Yorktown Memorial Hospital was built in 1951 and run for decades by the Felician Sisters, a Catholic nursing order, until it closed in 1986. It reopened briefly as a drug and alcohol rehab center, then shut permanently in the 1990s. Since then, it has decayed into a shell that paranormal enthusiasts treat as essential Texas geography. A British tabloid once crowned it the most haunted place on Earth, which is a distinction the town of Yorktown probably did not apply for. The ghost tour lore that surrounds the building is extensive. Around 2,000 people are said to have died within its walls over its working lifetime. Visitors on overnight tours describe black mist in the corridors, plunging cold spots in the basement, phantom crying and moaning, and a persistent sense of being watched from rooms that are documented as empty. These accounts have circulated widely enough to turn Yorktown into a destination for investigators from across the country. Here is what the brochure does not lead with. The death tally comes from tour marketing rather than any verified record. 2,000 is a number that no documented accounting of the hospital's patient history appears to support. The hauntings are unproven by any standard of evidence. The building itself is a genuinely deteriorating private structure, and the city of Yorktown has moved to restrict access on straightforward safety grounds. The floors and walls are in the kind of condition that makes collapse a real concern, not a metaphor. The Felician Sisters who ran this hospital were a real religious order doing real medical care. The patients they served were real people. The building was a functioning institution before it became a ruin. 2,000 deaths is a number that came from a brochure. The building, though, the building is genuinely falling apart. If a town or two on this list has you rethinking what you thought you knew about Texas, that is what this channel is for. Subscribe and stick with us. Number 2, Mineral Wells. About 50 miles west of Fort Worth, in Palo Pinto County, a town of roughly 14,820 people went about its business for decades in the shadow of a 14-story brick tower that loomed over Main Street like something that had died, standing up and been left in place. The Baker Hotel opened in 1929, weeks after the stock market crash. Timing that tells you something about the gap between ambition and circumstance. It offered 450 rooms, a bowling alley, and an Olympic-sized pool. For a stretch, it drew the famous, which is the kind of thing that defines a building's mythology for the rest of its existence, regardless of what comes after. What came after was closure in 1972, and then decades of vacancy. The windows went dark, the interior sealed, and there the tower sat, in the middle of a living town. Businesses open below it, traffic moving on Main Street. A 14-story derelict with its legends spreading by word of mouth while Mineral Wells went about its ordinary business beneath it. The baker's ghost stories grew to match the scale. A lady in white tied to the 7th floor, said to have leapt to her death, and a bellhop whose death inside the building left him walking the corridors. These are the stories that attach themselves to a building of sufficient size and sufficient neglect, and the baker had plenty of both. Here is the part that changes the calculation as of 2026. The baker is no longer truly abandoned. A roughly $65 million restoration began in 2019 and has been driving toward a targeted spring 2026 reopening. The derelict tower spell, 50 years of black windows staring down at a living town, is in the process of lifting. The hauntings remain unproven legend. The interior was never a place you could wander. It was guided tours or nothing. The building that sat as the most recognizable ruin in Texas for half a century is being converted back into something that charges for a room. For 50 years, this town carried a 14-story ghost on its back. Now they're trying to check it in as a guest. Number 1, Jefferson. A riverport of about 1,875 people on Big Cypress Bayou in the deep piney woods of Orient County, northeast Texas, and the only town on this list that has been its own ghost tour for 100 years running. In the 1850s, Jefferson was a thriving inland port. Steamboats reached it all the way from New Orleans. The wealth that came through built the structures that now anchor its reputation. The Excelsior House Hotel, dating to the 1850s and one of the oldest working hotels in East Texas. The Grove, a private home built in 1861 that has been called the most haunted house in Texas. The shuttered Jefferson Hotel with its Room 19 lore. The commerce and the architecture set the stage. What filled the stage was the Diamond Bessie murder trial of 1877, a sensational case that still feeds the town's ghost walk narration a century and a half later. The Excelsior House trades in a woman in black and a headless figure. The Grove has its lady in white, seen drifting along the porch before she vanishes into the garden. Every block of the historic district has something attached to it, some name or date or account that gets handed to you by lantern light. On a fog-heavy night, when the bayou is steaming and the gas lamps are burning, the whole town is performing its reputation simultaneously. Not one building, not one attraction, but the entire historic core working together as a single sustained atmosphere. That is the thing to hold on to about Jefferson. Walking its streets on a night like that, you are not encountering an accidental haunting. You are experiencing a deliberate, century-long construction. The hotels are working businesses that welcome guests and charge accordingly. Diamond Bessie is old legal history, not modern tragedy. The lady in white and the woman in black and the headless figure are legend, not documented phenomenon. There is no verified account behind any of it that would survive examination outside of a ghost tour script. What Jefferson has built is something rarer and, in its way, more impressive than a haunting. An atmosphere so completely realized that it sells itself by lantern and narration and fog, and has been doing so without interruption for 100 years. That is what tips this town above everything else on this list. The Grove has its staged stillness. Yorktown has its deteriorating hospital. The Baker Hotel had its black windows. Jefferson has all of its pieces working at once, every night, with the bayou cooperating and the town knowing exactly what it is doing. The question worth sitting with is not whether any of it is real. The question is what it means that a town has maintained a single claim, flatly, seriously, commercially, for a century, and refined it to the point where the performance and the place have become genuinely hard to separate. 100 years of calling yourself the most haunted town in Texas. At some point, does the reputation become the haunting? Texas doesn't need to invent its ghosts. It just needs to stop maintaining the roads that lead to them. Which one of these would you actually spend a night in? And which one would you turn around at the city limit sign? Drop it in the comments. If 12 towns can unsettle you in daylight, the roads between them are their own conversation. The Texas highways where travelers have been reporting things that don't have names yet. That video is next. Like this one and subscribe so you don't miss it when it drops.